good evening. Peace to everyone. Peace. And I'm going to only speak briefly here, maybe 5-10 minutes, so that we can get the person that you all came to hear tonight up here so she can give her dynamic delivery, and that's what I came for also. I have a friend of mine here, who a co-worker I work with, work the same place I'm at, and they've been looking at the copies of Shifter Strategy and Complete Patriot, and I got to tell you, it's transforming some lives there, I think, you know, and it definitely have crossed some color barriers too. You know, so we've got folks who are really interested in this kind of information, meaning that we're dealing with the law that people should have been taught about and was not taught about. Okay, so this is just a brief little update. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Mahir, but I think mostly everybody here knows me. I'm one of the, as we call ourselves, the Unknown Brothers. And I know it's 8:19. We're ready to get started. And Sister Maat, okay, you come all the way from Detroit. Okay, especially for us. Okay. All right. Without further delay, I would like to bring up Sister Maat so that she can take us into another aspect of things and things that we definitely need to pay attention to. So I don't think I need to ask you to do that, because you will do that. And let's give the sister a nice warm welcome.
Sister New York City. This is the first time I've been in New York since the last 22 years, so it's been quite a while. And I feel a lot of very, very positive vibes coming from all of you this evening, so I'd like to thank you very, very, very much. Oh,
they can't hear you. That mic is only for the camera.
Okay. As you know, my talk this evening is on a very, very important topic. It's on a very, very spiritual topic. The first thing I did before I even, you know, came up here to speak to you was to write on the board the beginning of this particular topic, and that topic, of course, is melanin. I want to really get right into it because I know that some of you are very anxious for the information. Melanin, of course, is the substance that is in our system that Europeans are working night and day, brothers and sisters, literally night and day to duplicate. It's something that we take for granted, but they sure don't. It's something that saves us, and they want to save them with the melanin. As you see here on the blackboard, I have the steps that it takes to produce melanin. As the brother stated, the important information about light and fiber optics. Well, of course, the sun is the most important energy source and the major energy source on the planet. And so the process of melanin, the process of making the melanin, of course, begins with the sun, which our people, the ancient Africans who walked along the Nile valleys, called Ra.
Can we hold it just right here, just now?
Sure.
I need the attention. I'm sorry. Now, you gonna have Sister Maat, baby. All right? You know, y'all so fresh. Okay. Let us put our hands and our feet together. If you really want to see this sister, what happened? Oh, test it. Okay, wait. Right now, Sister Maat from Detroit. Can I hear it from Detroit? Now she needs a mic, so y'all take 2 more seconds here.
I think I've been here before.
Okay. I'm sorry I interrupted you, but I had to get those things in there.
Okay.
Don't get smart now. I know all y'all. I got your number.
Okay.
That's right. Thank you. I see it's somebody. Where's
Here,
Pop.
I'll put it up here.
Is this all on?
It'll be okay.
I'm out your face.
I hope I'm not, I don't think I'm taking you too fast, because this is New York.
Okay. They can't hear you. And you got to talk into the mic. Right. So in case they miss anything, it'll come on the video.
Right. When I first began my study of melanin about 5 years ago, it led me to other substances that produce the melanin. And one of the substances that produced the melanin, of course, was the inner eye, or what we call the third eye, or what the Europeans call the pineal gland, which is in the center of the brain. And the pineal gland produces a hormone that goes on to produce the melanin. And this is why I wrote this chart up here, melanogenesis, the beginning of melanin. The beginning of melanin, or the manufacture of melanin, actually starts with Ra, with the sun. And then the rays of the sun go on to hit our eyes, especially the pupils or the darker parts of our eyes. When the rays of the sun hits our eyes, brothers and sisters, it stimulates our eyes, and those rays go to the center of the brain by way of a pathway, which they call the neural pathway. On this neural pathway, it leads to the center of the brain, to a tiny group of nerve cells. And those nerve cells are the actual pineal gland. The pineal gland is a cluster of nerve cells that's in the center or in the midbrain. Now, when these nerve cells are stimulated, or what they call innervated, then it goes on to secrete or to put out the hormone melatonin, which goes on to deposit the melanin in our cells, in our pigment cells. So the pineal gland is the inner eye, or the third eye, in the midbrain, and melanin is the substance that colors our skin, our eyes, and our hair. So when we talk about melanin, we're talking about color. We're talking about pigmentation. Now, again, as I stated before, this is something that we take for granted, brothers and sisters, but Europeans do not take melanin for granted. They take the pigment very, very seriously. They're working in the labs 24 hours a day in shifts here in the United States and also in Japan, because those groups of peoples are the peoples in the earth or on the earth that have the least amount of melanin. So they know that our melanin will save their lives. So they're working to duplicate, to make carbon copies of this substance that's in our pigment cells, or in our cells in general. Now, I mentioned the word melanocytes. What do I mean when I say melanocytes? Let's take a look at this word, melanocytes. Melanocytes are the color cells. Melanocytes are color cells. They are the cells that hold the melanin. And it's an interesting thing about the melanocytes, brothers and sisters, because there are the same number. Africans and Europeans have the same amount of melanocytes, but they have a different structure and we have a different function. Our melanocytes act as individual melanocytes. They're dispersed more throughout our skin cells. But the melanocytes, or the color cells of Europeans, are more grouped together. So these are our color cells. Okay? In Africans, they are dispersed more individually in our skin cells, but in Europeans, they're grouped more together. Also, the color cells in our skin are larger. Our melanocytes are larger. With Europeans, theirs are much more smaller. And for African people, we are genetically programmed to produce more melanocytes. There's a genetic and automatic genetic program in us that produces more and different structure melanocytes or color cells. Now, this is the really heavy point about melanin. I mentioned genetically programmed for us. They are deprogrammed not to produce as many melanocytes, and their melanocytes, as I just stated, are smaller. This is the catalyst that actually spurs the production of the melanin. Tyrosine is an amino acid, and it's found in all dietary protein. In Africans, the tyrosine is accepted. As long as we are getting some type of food with protein in it, then our cells accept tyrosine, the amino acid or the enzyme. But Europeans are genetically programmed to not accept tyrosine. That's the biggest difference between Africans and Europeans. We are genetically programmed to accept the catalyst that actually produces the color, whereas Europeans, they don't accept it. I don't care how much dietary program or protein they have, they cannot accept tyrosine. They are genetically programmed to not accept the tyrosine, the catalyst to actually producing the melanin. That is what makes us different from Europeans. Okay. Now, an interesting subject is what's in the melanin. As the sister stated and the brother stated, I'm from Detroit. And when we were in a lecture at Wayne State University, a sister asked, well, what's in the melanin that makes it so important? What's in the melanin that makes us genetically stronger? Well, melanin consists of 4 very, very important chemicals. First, in the melanin is oxygen, which is a cleanser. When we go outside to breathe in the air, our body takes in the oxygen, and because of that oxygen, it cleans our blood. It cleans our system. Secondly is nitrogen. Nitrogen it acts as a tranquilizer. It relaxes us. That's another chemical that's in the air. So we have our nitrogen. The next substance that's in the melanin that makes it black is the carbon. Carbon, C-A-R-B-O-N. Okay? The same thing that's used to distill water. They put carbon crystals in it to distill water. Let's see. And the fourth thing is, see if I can look at this. Carbon, hydrogen. Oh, hydrogen. Hydrogen is water. So really, these are the secret ingredients. But the structure of these ingredients, Europeans don't know. And thank God they don't. They don't know in what ratio or how much oxygen is in the melanin cells, how much nitrogen, or what's the ratio of the carbon to the hydrogen. And when we say hydrogen, we're talking about water. So 4 of these substances are actually cleansers. The cleansers are the oxygen, the carbon, and the hydrogen. One substance, the nitrogen, is a tranquilizer. And it's in abundance in the hormone that actually deposits the melanin in the color cells. Now, let's talk a little bit about that. And again, I don't want to go too fast, but I was told that the brothers and sisters here were up on the melanin and you were very sophisticated. So I'm taking it from there. Okay? Okay. On this flyer, you see the graph. It says melatonin's path. Melatonin, the nighttime hormone. Why in the world would I call it the nighttime hormone? Obviously, because it's produced at night. And as you can see from the graph, some little letters at the bottom of the graph towards the left. It says critical period from 12 a.m. to 2 a.m. that means that that period, and you can see on the graph, if you look from 12 to 2, those bars are higher than in any other period to the right or to the left of the graph. That's because that's when the hormone melatonin is being produced in abundance, and when it's being produced, it's depositing the melanin in the bloodstream. So between the hours of 12 and 2, that's when you make your melanin. That's the time period where you make more melanin than in any other time, unless you're going to expose yourself, to sunlight. Of course, we make melanin when we expose ourselves to the sunlight. But biologically, we make it at night. Okay? So as you can see, starting at 9 o'clock, that's when the body actually kicks in. Now, this graph really is made for the summertime, like this period of time, because it gets darker later. Usually gets dark around 8:30 and 9. So at 9 o'clock is when the body really begins to produce that melanin in summer. Now, okay, so we're talking about dusk. When the sun goes down, then it starts moving. Then as you can see at 10 o'clock, your body produces more melanin. At 11 o'clock, and then at 12, between 12 and 2, there's a big increase. So it's produced, that hormone is produced in darkness, and our melanin is produced in darkness. Now, when you get towards the daylight hours, that hormone is decreased. Now we've got sunrise, we've got dawn. As soon as the eyes perceive the light, then it starts to shut down. Then you produce another type of hormone, but basically it's melatonin, but it's known in a different name or with a different name. During the daylight hours, our body produces serotonin. It's melatonin, but with a different name. Now, during the daylight hours, the melatonin geeks you up so that you can work, so that you can have a lot of energy, so that you can go to your jobs and go to school and study, because you need that. So during the daylight hours, the melatonin acts as a catalyst. It geeks you up. It gives you the energy. At night, the melatonin relaxes you. And basically, that's what it does. It relaxes you. Okay? So melanin is one of a number of things that the pineal gland does, that tiny gland that's in the center of our brain. Now, let's go back in time, brothers and sisters, to the ancient African people and how they represented the pineal gland or the pineal eye or the third eye or the biological clock. Let's take a look at some information. Let's see, where's my eraser? What did I do with that thing? Oh, here it is. Okay. Now, this information is new to Europeans, but of course it was not new to our people. The ancient African people knew of the pineal eye. They called it the eye of Horus. Or you might see in some books the eye of Huru. I'll just put H-O-R-U-S, and you could also spell it H-E-R-U. The eye of Huru, or the eye of Horus, who was the son of Isis and Osiris. Isis, of course, being the original Black Madonna, and Osiris being the main god. Now, some people, they get kind of confused, and they say, well, the ancient Egyptian people had many gods. They worshiped many gods. I mean, yes and no. They worshiped many gods, but they had one main god, and that one main god, his name was Osiris. Okay? So the eye of Huru was the pineal eye, was the third eye. And they call it pineal because it's shaped in the form of what they say is a pine tree, but what we say is, of course, the pyramid, the triangle. Okay? Now, the brother mentioned mathematics. In mathematics, we know from the study of the pyramids that our people were the first people to use this very, very important mathematical formula, c squared is equal to a squared plus b squared, to build the world's most famous triangular figure. And that figure, of course, was the pyramid. They used this so-called Pythagorean theorem, but it didn't have anything to do with Pythagoras, brothers and sisters. This was taught to that Greek about dynasty 18, I believe. I believe dynasty 18, but at least 1,500 years before Pythagoras was born. This theorem that deals with a triangle that has an angle that's shaped like a perfect L, the right angle, the angle that's 90 degrees. This is a critically important angle for mathematics. If you're building something, you're going to run across this triangle that has that 90-degree angle. Anytime you have this 90-degree angle, then you can apply this formula, c squared is equal to a squared plus b squared, which they call the Pythagorean theorem, which should be correctly called the Kemetic theorem because the Kemites taught it to Pythagoras. Okay? Now, I don't want to get into very, very deeply into mathematics, but that's entirely another issue. So we're talking about the ancient Kemites, the people who walked along the Nile River. Okay? Pineal, melanin, blackness. They represented the pineal as the black dot. Okay? They had a number of representations for the pineal, but in their language they represented it as the black dot. Now you might see it like this in the language of Meta Nature. Okay? But basically that's incorrect. If I had some black chalk, I could kind of color this in, but basically it's a circle that's colored in with, I don't need that white. It's colored in with blackness, the black dot. We'll just use our imagination, okay? And this black dot was a part of their alphabet that stood for the letter H or K. Ka. That's how you pronounced it. Ka. Okay? Now, from this letter, which was a part of their alphabet, that's where we get the first or the oldest term for blackness. That's where we get the term Kim, K-H-M, or K-H-M-T. All right? So let's look at this word. Here's the K-H, the Ka, the black dot. Here's the M. The M was the owl. And even today, the owl is a symbol of wisdom, trust, quiet strength, knowledge. So this is what it meant. Here we have the Ka, here we have the M, and we have this little loaf, which is a T. So this is one of the earliest words for Kemet, which meant black. Okay? Now, we had another word that was similar to blackness, really that was black, and it was Shechem, or Shechemet. Now, Shechemet meant to be complete. So we see the word Shechemet, which meant to be complete, which meant black. So to our ancient ancestors, to be black meant to be complete. It meant success. It meant perfection. Now these were the ancient words that were associated with black. Obviously, in our society, black means everything that is bad, everything that's negative. Let's take a look, unfortunately, you know, they say the truth will set us free. Let's take a look at some of the words that are associated with black, brothers and sisters. Very interesting things start to happen when we have this, what I call the black test. All right, here we see the word black. Anyone, when I say the word black, what do you think of? What's the first word that comes into your mind? Anybody? Yes. I can hear you. presence of color. Color. Someone over here said, beautiful. All right. Have a very conscious audience. Color. Power. Yes, yes. Anybody else? The unknown. Okay. Anybody else? Timeless. Interesting. Timeless. Original. First. Anybody else? Awesome. Okay. Basically, as I stated before, evidently, you're a very conscious audience, because these were the words that the ancient ancestors associated also with blackness. All right, now let's try another word. Let's see what you come up with. I hope everybody's got that written down. All right, let's try white. When you think of white, when I say the word white, what's the first word that comes to your mind? Death. Beast. Colorless. Absence of color. Absence of. What is it? I don't hear what you say. Absence of light. Reflective, yes. Somebody said something over here was loveless. AIDS. What? Devil, yeah. Evil. Okay? Okay, now I'm running out of space, so. Okay. These were the words, particularly death, evil, and devil, but especially these two words our ancestors associated with the color white. So to be black meant to be divine, meant to be awesome, meant to have power, meant to be complete, meant to be perfect. So as African people, we have all of those characteristics within us. So there should be no reason why we cannot solve our problem. All we've got to do is reach back into our genes and bring up color, beauty, power, the unknown, timeless, original, first, and awesome. Okay? Okay. Now, let's go on to some more information about the melanin. In regards to the melanin. Okay, now I want to go back, kind of backtrack, and go back to the pineal eye. Well, what was the difference in the pineal eye with the Europeans and with the Africans? How did they see it? Okay, now with the ancient Africans, the pineal eye was largely that. It was largely an eye. They saw it basically as the inner eye. Okay, the eye of Haru, the eye of Horus. But for Europeans, they see it largely as a clock. And they're correct in that sense because it is a clock. It helps us to be timed with our environment. Let's look at some specific things or some specific discoveries that they've made about the pineal eye or the pineal clock. What does it do besides produce the melanin, which is a heavy point in and of itself? Now, these things that I'm going to mention relate very well to the melanin. The pineal eye has a number of functions. First, it functions as an eye. Then it functions as a clock. And as I stated, as you saw on the flyer, it knows when to produce that melanin. It knows what time. It tells the body, well, hey, it's 12 o'clock. It's time to put out that melanin in those color cells. So we have an eye. We have a clock. It is also a compass. That means that with the melanin in our system, it helps us to find our direction. Now, to the ancient Egyptian people, their direction was a little different from the Europeans. Of course, in the European system, we have north being at the top of the globe, or at the top of the compass. Here we have north, south, east, and over here we have west. Okay? But for the ancient Kemites, their direction was up south. So we had south at the top, north at the bottom. Okay? And this relates, again, to the mathematics that the brother was speaking of earlier. Because if we make a circle around these 4 points, we have what you call the unit circle. And that is a unit circle that we use to solve our trigonometry problems. So over here we have the south at the top, north at the bottom. West would be over here, according to the directions of the ancient Egyptian people. And east would be to the left. So we say down south, they would say what? Up south. They would say up south, down north. And why is that? That's because the Nile River began in the south of Africa. It begins in that area of Uganda and Tanzania. Then it flows upward. So this is why, and I really should put, okay, so south to the ancient Africans would be Upper Egypt. Okay? And then the north, that would be Lower Egypt. Okay? Now, let's get back to the word Kemet, which was the first word for blackness, for melanin. Okay? Here we have Kim, which means black. Okay? And then the Greeks really gave us the term melanin. They used melos, which meant black. Okay? Now, when we look at Egypt, the Greeks used the term Egypt, Egyptos. But our people call their own country Kemet, the black land, or the land of the blacks, or the land of the black people. So again, we have KHMT. Now, when our people used their language, when they wrote hieroglyphics, and again, that's a Greek term, but when they wrote hieroglyphics, they didn't use vowels. They only used consonants. Okay? So I'm going to write the different terms for blackness so you can see visually exactly what's going on from the language of the ancient Kemites. Okay, here we go. All right, first we have Kim, which means black. And we have this word in the language of the Medu-Neter. We have the owl. And basically that's it. Now, that's the basic word for black in the language of hieroglyphics. Then we have the black land, and that would be Kemet. Okay? So again, we have this symbol, which is a charred piece of wood. It's burnt at the end. We have the letter M. All right. So for the black gland, we have the T, which gives it, or which is this symbol, the loaf. And we have this symbol, which means land or location. Okay. All right. Now this symbol here is a symbol for a place or a country or land. But this symbol isn't necessarily alphabetical. It's what they would call a determinative. When our people would write the language of hieroglyphics, and I'll get into the etymology of that in a couple of minutes, they would write the letters. Here we have KH, M, and here we have our T. But this is a symbol that's used, oops, this is a symbol that's used to help you understand what the word is. What are they talking about? They're talking about a location. So this isn't pronounced, but it's a concept. It's something that helps us to understand what this word is. So now let's go, I think I've got a couple more. Let me write the next one. Here's one, here's two, here's the third one. Number 3. All right. Here we have Kim again, but it's a little different. It has another symbol. And of course the owl. But it has this symbol, which is a symbol for a word that is abstract. This symbol is a papyrus roll, P-A-P-Y-R-U-S. It's kind of hard to see, but it's spelled papyrus, P-A-P-Y-R-U-S. Now this is a papyrus roll that's tied up or rolled up and tied. This was their symbol for a book. By itself it means book because their books were papyri. They got their books or their paper for the books from the papyrus plant, which grew along the edges of the Nile River. Now, again, this is the Greek term, papyrus, but they would use the term papu, P-A-P-Y. So the Greek term is papyrus, but the Egyptian term is papu, P-A-P-U. And that was their word for paper. This is where we get the word paper from. They would make their paper from the papyrus plant, which grew in abundance in Lower Kemet. In fact, the symbol for Lower Kemet was the papyrus plant. Okay? All right. They would cut the plant in strips and cut it diagonally, and they would lay the strips down horizontal and also vertical. And they would press the strips or the papyrus strips together, and then the natural glue would immerse to bind it. They would let it sit for about 8 days, and after it would dry, you could write on it. And that's the first paper. Now that's why we know so much about the ancient Egyptian people, because of the paper that they used to record their history. And the people that recorded their history were the scribes. Okay? The oldest known mathematics book was written by an Egyptian scribe whose name was Amos. Okay. All right, so we have the third term for Kim, which means black. And again, this papyrus rolled up and tied, this means that the word is an abstract word. Okay? And the last one is Shechem. This fourth one is S-K-M. And we would use this symbol here, which is alphabetical, which is their symbol for the letter S. And we'd also use, again, this charred piece of wood. The end of this piece of wood has been burnt, and it's black, because the ancient Greeks described the Egyptians as the burnt-faced people with the woolly hair. They were not white, which some Europeans are still trying to tell us today. Okay? So we have S, K-H, and then again we have the owl, which is the letter M, that symbol of knowledge, wisdom, and quiet strength and trust. And we have the T, and I'll put some of these down, some of these letters down here. And again, we have the papyrus. The papyrus rolled up and tied. So this means Shechem, which means black, which meant complete. Okay? Complete, success, and perfect. They called Osiris Lord of the Perfect Black. Okay? All right. Now, let's go on. Talking about the melanin and the pineal gland, which actually produces the melanin. Okay? Now, the last point that I mentioned about the pineal gland was that it was a compass. It helps us to set our directions. And this is because some information that Europeans had written on last summer, 1993, in May of 93. They have found that in the area of the third eye, they have a lot, there are a lot of magnets in the area of the third eye, a lot of magnet crystals. And those magnets, of course, is what helps us to set our directions of north, south, east, and west. And this is the directions that the hieroglyphs were written in. It was written from top to bottom, from left to right, from right to left. It could be written in columns and also horizontal, vertically and horizontal. And I mentioned the fact that the word itself, hieroglyphics, was the word that was given to us by the Greeks. Hiero. Hieroglyph. Okay? Hiero means high. And glyph means a decorative writing. A decorative carving or writing. Now, they said that the Egyptian priests were the people that wrote the hieroglyphics, but there were other people that wrote the hieroglyphics other than the priests. You had the scribes. Those were the two very high echelon Africans in that particular society. You had the scribes and the priests. These were the ones that wrote the books. Okay? And as I stated before, the oldest math book that was written in 1650 BC was written by the scribe Amos. And it has evidence that our people knew arithmetic, algebra, geometry, trigonometry, and the beginnings of calculus. And that's documented. So it's no reason why we should be poor in math, because we invented the mathematics and we wrote about it in our books, in our papyri. Now, our people call their writings the writings of the God's words. Writings Medu, Neter. Okay? Neter meaning God. And Medu meaning word. So you have the divine words, or the words of the gods. Medu, Neter. Now, how did they write that in the language of Medu Neter? Now that we have the word, then we can start calling it what it should be called. Medu Neter. First, again, they would use this symbol for the book or something that's abstract. Then they would use this symbol, okay, which meant majesty. Okay? Then they would use this little bird, the quail chick. Okay? Okay. And they would use this symbol, which really looks like a flag, but isn't. I think I'll write this another way. Okay? Now, these four symbols represent the word Medu Neter, or gods, or the gods' words. Okay. Now, we have a very, very interesting phenomena that happens when we don't get enough sunlight. Of course, we know when we get our sunlight, we feel happy, we feel very cheerful. But what happens when we don't get the sunlight? What happens when we don't produce that hormone that makes the melanin? All right? They actually have a term for what happens to you when you don't get the sun, when you don't get Ra. They call it a disorder called seasonal affective disorder. Say it. Seasonal affective disorder. Seasonal affective disorder. Let's, I'll write vertically. Seasonal affective, meaning something that has to do with your emotions or your mind. And of course, disorder. Okay? This is what happens to you when you don't get enough sun, or when you don't get enough sunlight. Your body starts to produce an overabundance of the hormone that actually produces the melanin. In other words, it produces the hormone melatonin at an inappropriate time. So you get tired, you get sleepy. You wonder why you're tired on gray days, on days where you don't see the sunlight. That's because your body is producing an overabundance of melatonin. And because of that, you feel kind of lethargic. You don't have that alertness that you had when you see the sunlight. Now, what does the sun do for us? Other than, help us to produce our beautiful melanin, our beautiful color. Well, the sunlight helps our body to produce a substance that can aid us, or that can help us to combat AIDS. Okay. We see the word opiate. The word opiate actually means a natural drug. When our body produces the hormone that goes on to make our melanin, what it does is it strengthens our T cells, and those are the cells that help us to fight that AIDS virus, the immune deficiency syndrome, okay? So when we're exposed to the sunlight, the body, of course, produces the hormone that makes the melanin, and that makes our T cells stronger, okay? That melatonin makes our T cells much, much more stronger by producing an opiate. The opiate is actually the catalyst to strengthening the T cells, and those are the cells that help our immune system to stay strong, help us to fight off all of those infections that we're exposed to. As soon as we go outside, we're exposed to all types of germs. So how come we don't get the tuberculosis? How come we don't get the different types of germs? That's because if you've got an abundance of T cells, then you can fight those infections off with no problem. You can fight the flu off in a matter of time, as long as you've got a high T cell count. Okay? All right, so we have our seasonal affective disorder that happens when we don't get the sunlight. All right. Now we go to, again, let's go back to the pineal history, the history of the pineal eye and the pyramids. The history of the pineal eye and the pyramids. Now earlier I talked about the eye of Horus, the eye of Horus. When our people constructed the pyramids, first they constructed the bottom portion. Start all over again. Okay. Now the bottom portion of the pyramid looked like this. Today we call it a truncated pyramid. Truncate means when something is, you know, the top portion of that particular structure is cut off. And then after they would fashion or construct the bottom portion of the pyramid, then they would put on the capstone. Okay? And that capstone was the actual pineal eye. Okay. Now, on the Great Pyramid, the pineal eye is made of one of the strongest substances that the ancient Kemetic people mined for. They mined for basalt. And for the pineal eye, they used black basalt, which was very, very heavy, very, very strong. Okay? So at the top of the pyramid, they used the strongest substance. Now, the entire pyramid was made up of limestone. Now, when you use limestone for building something, you expect that structure to last forever. So on top of the limestone, right here at the pineal eye, or the eye of Horus, they use black basalt. And they use the black basalt for their most sacred structures. Some of the scribes, some of the statues of the scribes were made of black basalt. Okay? So at the top we have the capstone, the pineal eye, which is the symbolic eye of God. And of course we know that that's on the back of the dollar bill. The eye of God. Okay? Now, they actually had a mathematical formula that they used to determine what was the length, what was the width, and what was the height of the pyramid. They used a formula called the formula for the volume of a truncated pyramid. A pyramid that you construct before you put that eye of Haru on. So we see the formula says 1/3 of the height times A would be one of these sides. And they would square it. Plus another side squared. Okay? No, wait a minute. This is not squared. Plus the third side squared. Okay? We say this is side B. And this would be A right over here. Okay? So they would take 1/3 of the height, and they would take one side, square it, add it to the product, which means you're going to multiply, of the other side, plus the second side squared. Now, this is the modern-day formula that is used to express an ancient formula that they used to determine the length, the width, and the height of that pyramid before they put on the Eye of Haru. They had to find out, well, how much area are we working with? How many rooms can we fit in this particular pyramid? So instead of doing the same thing over and over again, because they built over 80 pyramids, they had to come up with a mathematical formula. And today, that ancient mathematical formula looks like this. This is the formula to determine the volume of a truncated pyramid. Okay. If there are any questions, brothers and sisters, please don't hesitate to ask them if you have any questions at this point. Yes, ma'am. The opiate? Okay, the melatonin strengthens our T cells by making a substance that is an opiate-like substance. And that opiate-like substance makes those T cells stronger. The melatonin helps us to be organized. It helps us to remember things. I'm going to erase this right here. Okay, melatonin helps you to be organized. It boosts your memory. How do you spell boost? B-O-O? Is that right? Okay. It boosts your memory, okay? It helps you, it strengthens your immune system. Okay. It strengthens your immune system by producing an opiate. that goes on to make your T cells stronger. Okay? So it does these three basic things. And in doing so, it obviously helps us to be intelligent. Because if you're organized, then you can make better decisions. And if you can remember things, then you can use that memory to help you to make better decisions. And obviously, if your immune system is strong, then you can be healthier. I believe in Detroit, Michigan, right before I left, there was a headline in Detroit News that said that AIDS is taking over homicide and being the biggest killer of black males. Okay? So the brothers really have to deal with their health. They really have to eat well. And that leads me to the next topic in regards to the melanin. Well, what helps us to produce more melanin? What can we do to keep that melanin flowing in our system? Well, there are a number of things that we can do. All right. First, if at all possible, we have to get in bed before 12 o'clock, before that critical period starts in our system. So we say get to bed before 12, if at all possible, but it's difficult sometimes because we all have our busy schedules. We have children, we have husbands, we have wives, and we have jobs, so it's difficult. But if at all possible, get to bed before 12. Just 1 minute. Question? Yes. If you like to stay up late at night, now I have to be honest with you, you might not like my answer, but you're not going to produce as much melatonin, and you'll tend to be forgetful the next day. That's what happens because once you start bumping into that critical period between 12 and 2, as soon as you expose yourself to, as soon as you expose the eyes to light, that light shuts down the melatonin. That's why you see in the graph, after 1 o'clock at night, the graph, the bar gets lower. That's because the sunlight, you know, dawn is getting ready to come up. So your body, your eyes sees that light, and it shuts the melatonin down for a reason, because during the daylight hours, you don't need a lot of melatonin. You need to be, you know, have more energy. So if you stay up all night, especially during that critical period, you're going to produce less melatonin. Yes? You should be in bed with all lights out, if possible. You know, there should be at least 3 to 4 days out of a week where you get to bed before 12, or else sooner or later you're going to break your body down. And it's not going to show up now when we're young at 40, or 30, or 25, but most of the disorders show up after 50 years old, and, you know, with some of our people even younger. Okay? Okay. Question, back here. What is the level that is acceptable? I don't know. Your doctor would have to tell you that. It probably varies from person to person, but I would imagine for black people, there should be a certain number of T cells. I think 200 and something T cells. I know my doctor told me mine was like in the 200s or something. But, you know, your doctor would tell you best. You know, yes. Oh, yeah. The next thing I was going to mention in terms of producing more melanin was to eat green raw vegetables, because they help to make your blood strong by producing that hemoglobin. And hemoglobin colors your blood also, but melanin plays the greater role in coloring not just the skin cells, but the blood also. Hemoglobin is what makes the blood red, and if you don't eat enough raw green vegetables, and that green is really important, because as I stated before, and let me abbreviate this. Well, the plants, the foods don't have melanin. Foods have substances that trigger our body to produce the melanin. Foods have their own melanin. Their own melanin is called chlorophyll. That's what you call melanin in plants and animals. Let me see if I can get over here. PHY, isn't it? Okay, yeah, I think that's right. Okay, in the animal, or excuse me, in the plant kingdom, their melanin is chlorophyll, the green. For us, for humans, our melanin is black, brown, deep red, and then you got all different variations. So their chlorophyll helps us to produce more melanin. So if you're staying up, like if you work during the night shift, you should really make sure that you eat a lot of green raw vegetables, for that brother to ask that question. Like your green peppers, your green onions, a lettuce, anything green will help your body to produce more of the melanin, because the pineal gland is located in an area that gets a lot of blood. A lot of blood. Okay. Let's say this is the brain, and I can't really draw that well, but I'll do the best I can. Okay. So here's the brain, and here we have the inner eye, the pineal. All right? It's really at the end of a stalk. Okay, that connects to our spinal cord. So in this stalk, you know, it's like a hollow stalk that a lot of blood gets to. So if you're eating the proper foods, that blood just shoots right up there to that pineal gland. So if you're eating your green vegetables, it feeds the pineal gland. Okay? Question?
They have a part about the cow has a part called melatonin.
Yes.
What effect does that have on your melanin?
What effect does the melatonin?
They have it in tablet form.
Oh, that's a good question. I'm glad you brought that up. The question was, the brother stated that they've just finished with a pill, and it's called the melatonin pill. It's as you know, melatonin, that's our natural hormone. What they've done is they've captured the natural hormone and they put it in pill form. And what it does is when you take it during the day, for those that can't sleep, it puts you to sleep because it's a natural tranquilizer. And that's something that I don't think, yes, this is the fourth one. The fourth thing that melatonin does is it acts as a natural tranquilizer. Okay, ER, all right? The melatonin acts as a natural tranquilizer, so when you take it in pill form, it's going to put you to sleep, especially for those that can't go to sleep at night, for those people that have insomnia. And it also cures jet lag. Now, I mentioned the pineal eye. Let's see if I can put this in all working order. Give me 1 minute. Oh, here we go. All right. Anyway. All right. The pineal I stated it acts as an eye, a clock, a compass, and also a rhythm setter. But the fact that it's a rhythm setter, that's under the clock. All right? The pineal eye sets the pace. It sets the cadence. It sets the beat for anything in our body that depends on timing. So that's why African people are good at rapping, because that eye tells us doom doo 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 doo. It's that pineal eye that tells us how many beats per measure, how many what do you call it, the eighth note, the fourth note, the second note, or the half note, quarter note. Let's take a look at these different fractions as it relates to the pineal eye. All right? So when we talk about rhythm, we're talking about patterns, something that repeats over and over again. We're talking about beats, and beats per measure. All right? Number of beats per measure for the music. Okay? We're talking about cadence. And we're talking about frequency. How often? Yes. Frequency, vibration, going up and down. Vibration. I really should be looking in my book. I'm trying to remember all this stuff. It's hard to do that, but right now I'm going to take a peek in my book and see. Okay. So these things are under the auspices of the eye, the clock, the compass. And it does it automatically. That cycle that tells us when do we go to sleep, when do we wake up, that cycle is under the control of the third eye. And they call it, technically, they call it the circadian rhythms. Circa, meaning about, that's that circle. We'll finish with this on. We can erase this. All right, circadian rhythm. All right, that means 24-hour. Anything that the body does in rhythm or in 24 hours is under the auspices of the third eye. All right? So a brother back there mentioned frequency. So here we've got the graph. Here's another graph. Up and down, up and down. Every 24 hours, we go to sleep. We wake up. We know what time to eat. We know what time to go to sleep. That's because that's the third eye is telling our body, hey, it's time to wake up. Even when we don't have that alarm clock. And I believe I was discussing this with a sister this morning. I stayed with a sister last night in wherever, way out in the suburbs of New York, okay? And there was no alarm clock, but I woke up at 6:30. And that's because I'm used to waking up between 5 and 6:30, especially between 6 and 6:30. So it's that natural clock that tells you, even though you don't have that alarm clock, time to get up. Because you're used to getting up at 6:30. You're used to getting up at 5 o'clock. Yes. Orange juice? Orange juice has a lot of it might be the enzymes. Okay, the brother said that someone told him that orange juice drunk at night is very good for the pineal eye. And I mentioned that it could be because of the enzymes that are in the orange juice. And those enzymes go back to that tyrosine, which is an enzyme or amino acid that is actually the catalyst to producing that melanin. And see, like back home in Detroit, this brother and sister, they actually went to one of these skin pigment conferences, and they said these Europeans was talking about nothing but the tyrosine, the enzyme that produces that melatonin. They were saying, if we could just produce tyrosine, it doesn't make a difference. If they produce it, they can't accept it. They're genetically programmed not to accept tyrosine, whereas our body just absorbs it. And that's what melanin does. Melanin absorbs that sunlight so that we can get the benefits of it. Now, brother over here mentioned reflection. They reflect sunlight. They can't accept good. I say about 5% of them can accept good. And those are the ones that are colored. But the rest of them, they can't accept good. Yes. What was your first question? You said something. Freckles is a dispersion of the melanocytes. See, for African people, our melanocytes are more dispersed. But with Europeans, their melanocytes are grouped together. So, you know, the freckles, that's an extreme amount of dispersion or spreading of the melanin. Now, in terms of Alaska, they had done a study in terms of what happens to people in Alaska where they have, I believe, perpetual darkness. Perpetual darkness, is that right? Yeah, 6 months, that's right. In general, now I can't speak for Alaska, but I remember reading an article about that. In general, sister, When there's perpetual darkness, when we're exposed to perpetual darkness, we can't shut off the melatonin. We get an overabundance of melatonin, so we're always tired and we lose our rhythm. We lose our rhythm. We don't know when to go to sleep, or should I say, we don't know when to stop sleeping. So it's like we're in perpetual twilight. So that's what happens to us. And all of us experience that to a degree when there are sunless days. It's hard to get up and go to work. It's hard to feel good because, you know, Ra isn't shining, so we're not getting those benefits. And see, you know, Europeans, they say stay out of the sun, but they're talking about themselves. They're not talking about black people, but they're not going to tell us that. They're talking about basically Caucasians. They must stay out of the sun because they can't take it. They don't have the tyrosine. Okay? Yes.
What about?
I think, yes, brother. Yeah.
Anything else to demonstrate that pineal gland?
Okay, what I say, is there anything else that we can do to strengthen the pineal gland? Okay, I mentioned getting to bed before 12. I mentioned eating the green vegetables, and by all means, when the sun is out, get a dose of sun. So I'll say a daily dose of sunlight, because the sunlight, it sets the pineal eye. It sets the third eye. It's what, you know, gives it its boost. If you don't get the sunlight, then the pineal gland loses its rhythm. So it loses its phase, and that's what causes jet lag. I think someone over here, yeah, the brother mentioned about the melatonin pill. What the melatonin does is it keeps us from getting jet lag by resetting the body clock. When we don't see the sunlight, our phase gets off. Our clock, here it is. Here we've got 12 o'clock here, 6 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 9. You know, here's normal time. But when we don't see the sun, then the phase, it gets screwed up, you know, goes over here. So what the melatonin does is it resets the biological clock. So that's why they're making it in pill form. And they've been working on that pill for about 4 years, and they just now got it out. Let me get some other questions over here, brother. Do they? That's for Caucasians, because their pineal gland is calcified. That means it's full of those remember I put limestone? That was the hardest substance that our brothers and sisters used to construct the pyramids. Those same limestone crystals are in the pineal gland of Europeans. Their pineal gland begins to calcify at age 7. Ours stays fluid up into old age. This is why black people don't age. Well, Europeans age because that pineal gland is calcified. It's turned to stone. And ours keep us close to God. It makes us warm people. The only reason why we act the way we act today is because we're in an abnormal environment. And didn't the brother earlier say to get the heck out of this country? Yeah, I hear you. Let me see. This brother hasn't asked a question in a while.
Yes, one thing that really helps is after sundown, avoid alcohol. Just before very disciplined sexual activity. Number 3, right again with ground concentrated.
Yeah.
And blessed, purified water.
Uh-huh. Okay, this brother also stated that at sundown it's best for us to curtail our sexual activities. Don't drink any alcohol. Eat some very ripe bananas. And you mentioned and purified water. Thank you, brother. Yes. Could you speak a little? Who told me about that? Yeah. Yes, sir. Yeah. The melatonin shut down.
Work that up, because I do that a lot. Usually I notice that at night I can be better
Yeah, because it's quiet. Well, they do have the melatonin pill out now. So one of the things that I can suggest is you go to your nearest health food store and get you some melatonin pills. What happens? Oh, you're going to go to sleep. It seems like in the morning you're going to have something that is a tranquilizer that'll help you to relax in spite of all those distractions. Okay? What about herbal tea? Herbal tea. Especially valerian. I know that's a herbal tea that helps. Valerian and rosehip. Valerian and rosehip tea, I know relaxes you. Because I used to have the same problem when I was a student. It would be hard to study during the day because of, the tremendous amount of traffic a lot of times in the libraries. So I just started drinking a lot of rosehip tea. And it just acts as a drug. It just calmed my nerves down. So I strongly suggest you get valerian or rosehip tea, which are natural tranquilizers, especially during the day. And what? B-complex, yes. B-complex. Those are known to calm your nerves. Okay, sister right here. Okay, personally speaking, I think the orange juice. Okay, the sister asked, what is it about the orange juice that she questioned the validity of the fact that we should drink orange juice at night. She had heard pineapple juice or grapefruit juice. I think it depends on the person because, like, my best friend, he's allergic to orange juice because he breaks out because of the acid. So I think it depends on the person. If you can deal with it, if your system can deal with it, fine. But I know oranges, like lemons, they have a lot of vitamin B. And that B complex is really good for your nerves. It really calms your nerves. So if you can take it, if your body can deal with the orange juice at night, fine. If not, try something else. Try what works for you. But I know the herbal teas seem to work for everyone. And like I said, they just got the melatonin pill on the market. And it's natural. They put that on the market because it doesn't have side effects. It doesn't have any unnatural chemicals in it. It's the body's own natural sleep drug. So if they have it here in New York, by all means, get it. Question over here? What degree is the pineal gland complex?
Dormant.
Yeah.
Well, the subject is, pineal gland awakening. What degree is it dormant?
Oh, okay. Interesting question. To what degree the lecture, the flyer says, the pineal gland, a third eye awakening. Knowledge helps to awaken us, and knowledge is light. And in regards to what degree it is dormant, I believe, now this is just my own theory, I believe the more we act European, the more our pineal gland calcifies. Not just on a personal level. I can't prove it, I don't know, but So I believe that what we can do for those of us that know that third eye is asleep, then we can practice more respect for ourselves and love for ourselves, and practice love and respect for that blackness, that black pigment, that rod that the Creator blessed us with. There are places in Europe where Europeans are worshiping the Black Madonna, and you better not move that Black Madonna. They still worship black people. But we in the West, because we're taught through symbolism that everything black is bad. The devil's food cake, excuse me, the angel, as opposed to the angel's food cake. It was a Black Monday when the stock market fell. Everything that's negative in this country is associated with blackness. So we've got to reverse that. The black plague, you know. I mean, that's crazy. So they teach us to hate our color. So when we see another brother or sister, when we start thinking negative, think positive. Hey, there's that black God. There's that sister. There's that black Madonna. So we got to deprogram ourselves so we won't be dormant. Yes, brother?
Europeans stay out of the sun because they can't tolerate it.
Yes, sir.
Right?
Yes.
And also, as the European progresses in age, his pineal calcifies.
Yes.
Now, what effect has the rape of our people by the Europeans, what is the effect upon the lightning of the hues of our people upon our pineal?
Okay. That's a heavy point, brother. Francis Wellesley says that they are actually purposely trying to depigmentize us because they know the power of that melanin cell. And that melanin, those melanin cells, those are macromolecules. Macro meaning large. Macromolecules. This will have to be the last question. You know, molecules. They can't break it down, but they're trying to. So it's like they don't want to bow down to Africans because they know that the black man is their father. They know that the black woman is their mother, but they just can't humble themselves. Okay? So they want to do the next thing, and is that they want to depigmentize us to make us, you know, just to keep us from getting that power. So, you know, that's what it is in my opinion.
Okay, I'm a lighter hue than you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, what effect does my lighter hue have on my pineal gland?
Okay, again, what effect? I'm melanin dominant. This brother's light skin. What effect does his light skin have on his pineal gland?
Yeah, being that our people were raped by the species.
Okay. Socially, I think that light-skinned Africans must work harder on their black love. Why? Because Europeans try to divide us. They'll do that forever. They'll try to divide us. They'll give you a favor, but they won't give me. And so that keeps us fighting each other. And you know, when we're weaker, so I think that for lighter-skinned African sisters and brothers, they shouldn't go for the hype. They shouldn't go for that division. They shouldn't, you know, allow themselves to get sucked into that divisions the Europeans will put on light-skinned Africans to keep us from coming together. I think Sister Hutchinson wants to, unless you want to take this last question. How you like the audience? How you like it? Thank you. We got brother right here.
Okay, wait, because we have a certain amount of time in here. And get out of here by 10 o'clock.
Can we get this last one from the youth, because you know how important they are.
Question 1 second. Don't forget we have tapes in the back. We have books up here.
I forgot.
You already got an order from the brothers.
Okay.
Brooklyn's in the house. Brooklyn's in the house. What about Leo? You in the house? Nobody Leo?
Okay, I'm glad that Sister Hatshepsut stopped me because I get so immersed in this that I forget. Much of the information is in my pamphlet called The Pineal Gland and Melatonin. A very simple, basic understanding, or a very simple, basic pamphlet that helps you to understand about melanin and what it does. And then the mathematics that I talked about is in the African Roots of Mathematics. This is $5. This is $15. I do have at least about 20 copies of these, and 20 copies of these. I have a little more of these, so if you'd like to come up and get some copies of the pineal gland and melatonin, their relationships to blacks, and also the African Roots of Mathematics, which documents the fact that African people invented the math. Yes, ma'am. Yes, brother.
To produce more melanin.
Wait a minute. Wait. Huh?
Brother has a question.
Okay, go ahead.
To produce more melanin, can you eat green fruits too?
Yes, definitely. Avocados. Yes, sir. Definitely.
Thank you.
Good question. Okay, let's go to the
Oops, excuse me. Why don't you white it out? Put it on pause.
Sit up.
Whoop.